Hi, everyone. Hi, Linda. We're back to talk about
Hi, Andre.
political.
It's a sunny day. We haven't had a sunny day, and I thought I was living in Seattle. We haven't had a sunny day in quite some time.
Yeah, well, here it's not sunny. They said it was going to be sunny, but it's not. So, and I'm
Beautiful.
not. I always think of this part of the world. We get the summer, and that's all we get when it's more sunny. So basically, late June, July. There's a saying here. They call June January because it feels still cold, and then finally it switches. But between now and then, sunny days are a bonus, but you can't really count on any
Right.
continue. It goes back to rain or cloudy or whatever. And also
Andre and I were
cool.
talking about that purple flower behind him, or plant, which
Yeah,
I think is called the labia, right?
I don't know what it's called, but it's probably what you said. It's probably
But he was telling me
lilac.
about what happens with him. Tell him the story about that particular plant, and if you
No,
take too
well,
much.
there is a flower. It's not this one though because it's a lot smaller. They're tiny little flowers. It's called lobelia, and it's used for breath expansion in the lungs. So people that they need respiratory help, a little bit is very good. It's a relaxant for the lungs. But if you take too much, because it's so strong, you'll vomit. So it's also known in the herbalist catalog as pukeweed. Even though it's not the kind of vomit that will make you really sick, it actually cleanses you, but it's uncomfortable. So I'm not
Yeah.
recommending that either.
See
Yeah.
how they had things down in those days? Like, I know the Native Americans, people in the UK, they were fantastic with that stuff.
Yeah, no, herbs are very interesting, and some of them have really great effects. Like one that I use pretty regularly is dandelion root, because you feel it. If you make a tea, it stimulates the juices. Like you can feel, the liver, the stomach, things move as a result.
I have some dandelion root in capsule form, and I
Yeah,
couldn't remember why I bought it.
that's
Do
probably
you
why.
recommend it?
Yeah, it's good, especially dandelion root. It's like a cleanser, and especially if you're eating protein, it balances it really well because it's more about cooling energy. But yeah, it's a very good herb for sure, for
Cool.
sure. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, that's the kind of thing that maybe RFK. If he hears about it, he's going to have everyone on dandelion root. That's the thing with with RFK is that it's the he's like a doctor with some good ideas, but he comes into the surgery room with an axe. So you kind of go, wait, that's
Yeah.
too much. It's all bundled with other ideas that are not so good, but some of his intentions aren't that bad when he's talking about getting rid of food dyes and things in the
Yeah, that's
system that.
good. Food dyes and cereal with our kids and all the sugar and stuff.
Yeah, but then side by side there are now a lot more measles infections and things like that. It
And he
just
doesn't
feels.
want you to get polio,
No, and
that
it, it
stuff.
it it just feels completely wrong. And then when you hear that he's now, I think I saw this story where he doesn't want to. He's blocking $600 million that are slated for vaccines in poor countries, and that'll mean more people will die because if you don't give them the vaccine, you can have some ideas about doing it through other means like vitamin A. I think he's interested in and things like that, but it's just not going to work whole scale, to keep people alive. So, but the point with him is that it's not going to a good place because he's
Yeah,
getting.
what's his chart look like?
It's not good because as we go toward, there's a zone now in the middle of the summer, right in July, basically, really close to midsummer, right around midsummer. There's a Saturn station, and it's a huge problem for someone like RFK because it's hitting directly into one of his planets and broadly all of them. It's not good. And the typical way that will show up is that someone like this, they work themselves into a problem, or just the problem appears, and then who knows, maybe it's that Trump needs to start to fire people, or it could be some other thing, but it's a problem. It's just not good, for him.
Well, Trump has also wanted to hire that woman that believes in vaccines.
That's true. That was a bit of a message, bringing someone like that in, because normally, if you look at 2025, he wasn't making any of these moves. And now, because things have not worked in so many places like that, that's why he had to get rid of Kristi Noem, because as one person put it, which is correct, a lot of times these people make him look bad. Like, how does Kristi Noem help you look good? No, she's doing things that make you look bad. How does Hegseth make you look good? It's like you have this. He looks like a teenager in charge of a man's job. It's just not, not a good thing. So then he looks bad. And so a guy like Trump, if he has enough problems, he looks for ways to distract, and, things are changing now and so forth. So that's one of the ways for sure the zone we're moving in is going to manifest. But also he himself isn't in great shape, especially right now, even before we get to that point, because that's a bit later now. The point we're in now, it's no good at all. That's why you keep reading, Iran is making the offers, instead of the U.S. saying, you got to do this.
Yeah, what's going on with Iran? I hadn't turned on the news today.
Iran is proposing things, and apparently he's not happy because he wants more than what they're proposing. Like, they're saying, we'll open the Strait of Hormuz if we stop fighting, but we'll talk about the nuclear later. Well, if we talk about the nuclear later, you know what's going to happen? He's going to end up having to take a deal that was worse than Obama's. Now, how's that going to look? All this work, all this money, to then finally realize, maybe Obama realized that it was less expensive and wiser to just, you're getting limited success, but it's better than getting nothing or getting the opposite of what you want.
So is he considering it or no?
I think he probably is, but I don't know if he is or not. All I know is that he's not happy. That's what the story said, that he's not.
But didn't they say they were going to still charge for going through the strait?
That's kind of in flux. One day you hear they're shooting at a boat, and the next thing you hear something else. The point is, the way it is right now, it isn't safe, because what transits through there is very volatile. If you're carrying a tanker full of oil, it's got to be safe for you. It's like a bomb, one shot and everyone dies. And then it also costs a lot of money. When you hear that Iran says they want $1 million or $2 million toll, and you think, well, that's crazy. Not if the tanker is worth more millions. That's just like a tax where they lose some money.
We lost all kinds of equipment, a lot. And they're showing pictures of the air bases that are out there, and they're demolished.
It's not good. And also the U.S., even though Trump is bragging constantly about the strength of the military, but it's a very, in a way, it's become a bit antiquated. They have a lot of really expensive equipment to do things that they could use, cheaper things. Like the Ukrainians have become the top army now in the world.
I know, they're fantastic.
Because of the way they have to fight Russia. So they're very good with attack drones and defense drones. And the U.S. is weaker. And the worst part is that it's very expensive and that they're running out. So that's another problem, because if he makes threats about doing serious bombing, and then they don't even have the equipment to do it, well, that's also another problem, right?
And so also they don't have the ability to assist Taiwan if China decides to hit them.
Yeah, no, exactly. Though I don't know that, honestly, I don't know that Trump would Trump is so twisted. I wouldn't put it past him to go to Xi Jinping,
and try to make a deal.
Yeah, and say, you can have Taiwan if we get whatever. This guy, he's now, the thing about Xi Jinping, though, is he's a lot more cautious than Trump. So he's not going to make easy deals. And, in China, they think things through a lot more, and they always play the long game. Where in the U.S., there's already a tendency to play the short game, and Trump is extreme short game. Trump is like someone that he's just day to day. What can I do?
He said out loud he's already bored with the Iran thing.
Yeah, well, he's bored, but he's stuck. He's stuck because
he shouldn't have called a war that we never asked for.
We're going to see. I think this next month is critical, because we're going to see if what some of these reports are saying is true, which is that a lot of the costs are now going to come online. Because up to this point, there's been a rise in gas and so forth, but it's going to get worse before it gets better, and that it's not going to look good, and it's going to put more pressure on.
And the cost for products and stuff. I just
Yeah.
saw the stock market is going down, not huge down, but enough. It's not going up.
Yeah, no, for sure. And the whole zone, I mean, that's one thing here that we do have to be careful and be, you know, sensible, because you can say, okay, look, this is bad for these people. It is because they have all these planets in that zone. But the country itself has, the US as a country is in a challenging zone now, and so is Iran too. This is not easy for Iran either. I mean, their people are suffering a lot because
Oh,
you're in the
yeah.
middle of these conflicts. So right now, it's a hard zone for both countries, and you can even argue that the entire world itself is in a zone. You know, this was something I when I was researching the Civil War, I learned that in that period in the 1860s, when the U.S. was fighting its war, multiple countries throughout the world started arming themselves and started looking after themselves. That's a very Aries way to behave. Aries is the most I, my, me sign. So a country will do this pulling in. And I noticed the other day, Zelensky said, he said, we can't count on anyone anymore. We have to do it ourselves. That's a very Aryan
But
move.
the
So,
UK
yeah,
just gave them a big load of money, and Hungary is releasing a bunch of money
that's
to
true.
them.
That's true. It's just the more the attitude where they, you know, they, of course, they'll take whatever they can get in
Yeah.
assistance, right? But they also realize we can't depend on other people's weapons, for example. They have invented
Oh,
their
yeah.
own, right? That's an example of look after yourself, you know. And the other thing to realize is that this methodology, this way of being, is currently very strong because if you think, for instance, Hungary, there's a new government, right? That guy is going to try to clean it up around the corruption. Obviously, he's already started
Yes,
to.
he's already started. I
Right,
love it.
but the one thing he's not doing, he's still to the right. Immigration, none. He's staying with the
Okay.
same plan. That's the classic, the country, you know, contracting in a way. And this Saturn in Aries till 2028, we'll probably see a lot of this. You know, until Saturn gets out of Aries. Even then, Neptune is still in Aries for many years, but Saturn is probably the biggest problem because as long as it's there, you'll get a lot of these contractions, you know, in countries pulling into themselves, doing
Yeah,
their own thing.
depending
Yeah,
on themselves.
yeah, yeah,
So,
exactly.
what was the horoscope like during the Civil War? The same as now?
Well, yeah, there's that one similarity that I've mentioned in the past is that, I mean, picture Neptune. Neptune has a 165-year orbit, right? It takes that long to go around. Well, it's just now that it returned, like when in the summer of last year, right around when Trump's policies were starting to take shape, right? Is precisely when the Civil War started in the 1860s with Neptune in those degrees, like at the beginning. And it's a 4-year period that the war lasted. Then it ended. That's 2028.
Okay.
Because it's 25 to 28 seems like 3, but really it's 4 if you look at the entire period. Like it's like 29 is when the president is sworn in, right? So you see that Neptune degrees are precise that way. You know,
Yeah.
this is where I remember in 2024, you know, because I thought, oh my God, another 4 years of this guy, you know, I'm kind of wondering what the hell. And then I realized, wait a second, this is the same cycle, and now we go into 28, and as well as that planet gets out of that zone, the Uranus 84-year cycle is on the return point. Those cycles always promote change. So then I realized, well, it's better to be on the losing side to take advantage of that. Because if you're on the winning side now, you're probably going to lose then. That wouldn't be
Right.
good. So that's another marker, you know, to keep track of. 'Cause I know,
And during the Civil War, it wasn't looking like
no,
the
at the
good
beginning,
side was going to win. It was
exactly.
bad for a long time.
Exactly. And this is where, you know, if you look at our current situation, people were rightfully despondent last year, especially. They would say things on the channel like, oh, we can't last that long and so forth. Well, now we're almost there, right? So the point is, yeah, you have to last that long. And like you said, in the Civil War, for the longest time, you could see the map. I saw this map with the colors, and it didn't turn blue until later, like for a long
Yeah.
time. Yeah. And then eventually the energy flipped, and then the war was won. And then that had big consequences, you know. Although I know people then say, well, they didn't really solve the problem. I'm aware of that. I know.
Yeah,
We
because
still,
that racism was so strong.
right, exactly. But I mean, even so, you got to start somewhere. If you don't start with a law that says you're not allowed to do this, then you couldn't. For example, in the subsequent century, there were a lot of prosecutions of the Klan because they kept trying to,
And I love me some Ulysses S. Grant, and he tried so hard. But when he was president, he would go to the South with his armies and try to stop the KKK. But apparently, there's some big law or constitutional law that the feds can't be involved with something like that, and he wasn't able to do it. He had to let it go.
Yeah, it's complicated. And, this is another reminder to people that, the perfect is the enemy of the good, because what you just said is a great example, right? The guy's doing what he can. The country's improved because they elected him, right? So that's good. But then you think, well, it's good, but it's not so good because he could have done more. And then you dig a little deeper and you find out that he was really bad around nepotism. He kept putting his family members, in like.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah. So then you think, well, that's no good. But you got to take what you can get. I mean, if you wait for Jesus to be in charge, yeah. If he returns, then great. Then we can all.
Well,
we can put,
when he lived with his wife and his father-in-law gave him a slave, he busted his buns to get the money to free that slave. He freed him with his own money. And that tells you what kind of heart he had.
Yeah, no, exactly. And it's like another example was Lyndon Johnson. Lyndon Johnson was a vulgar alcoholic. Like, he would do constantly vulgar things in the White House. He would be driving around this ranch with a bottle in his hand, speeding in his car.
I didn't know that.
But he was kind of like a man. Oh, and also like horrible around, sleeping with everything and everyone everywhere. I mean, he would
Right. And I heard a lot of the people didn't like. It's like Trump. He'd sit on the toilet in the Oval Office and crap while he's talking to people.
Oh yeah, like, I mean, you would have said, wow, this guy, I'm not sure he's such a nice guy, but he passed civil rights. I mean, I'd rather have that. I'd rather have that than what Trump does, because Trump is working against people, in a horrible way. So often in politics, it's like that. It's the lesser of two evils. That was another Kissinger line, whatever you think of him. He was heard to say, in politics, you're constantly choosing between two bad options, and you pick
That's true.
the least bad.
That's very true.
And then people complain because they'll say, well, how does this help me, and so forth. You got to take what you can get. But this is where the one key thing is never give up, because if you start saying, my vote doesn't count, that's how they win elections.
That's how they got him before.
Yeah, exactly. Like, every single time, it's been, in reality, Democratic undervote, where Democrats don't take it seriously and they don't realize they end up getting something even worse than what they want some ideal. They're not getting it. And then it's even worse. I remember that it really kind of enraged me a bit, not to the point of, my head exploding, but really irritated me in 2024 when I heard that in Michigan, the Arab population was very upset with Biden because he wasn't doing more for the Palestinians. And I remember thinking, yeah, but if you put the other guy in, then you're going to lose everything, because the other guy doesn't want to help them at all, right? I mean, Biden and Kamala were doing what they could to keep it as level as possible, because you got to realize half the country wants to help Israel and half the country doesn't. As soon as you put in Trump, he no bones about it. He just said immediately, finish the job. He wanted to turn Gaza into a resort, if you remember, right? So
Yeah.
you got to know your enemy, and you got to make sure, push back against that, and don't tell me about voting for third parties, and like, you're throwing away your vote. It means that your vote doesn't really have an effect on the election, and you can get the opposite of what you're looking for, right?
Well, who's the Speaker of the Congress? What's his name? Or not Johnson, the other one.
Jeffries?
Yeah, somebody said he made an announcement that impeaching Trump won't be first on their list when they take over.
Well, the thing about impeaching Trump is you have to look at whether or not it's to your political advantage to do that. And it may not be. You just got to gauge, before you make a plan. And this is like Trump's big, Trump had in his mind, tariff. Should have thought that through. There are things that are in your mind, and you got to examine them. My biggest learning in life has been when I've had some idea that was totally wrong. And I would hold it. Then I would find out that was stupid. Why were you imagining that? Don't imagine that anymore, right? It's wrong. Don't follow it. So you test things, and it might be that impeachment is the way to go, or it might not. It depends. Because, for example, let's say right now they just go in, we're going to impeach him right away. Like, for what? And then you know that in the Senate they're not going to convict. So you have to figure out, do we want to do this and have the public be on our side? The job would be do whatever is going to work to enhance victory in 28. That comes 2 years later. Do everything possible to keep their numbers.
But also, we can't say anything because we need to see how big the numbers are that the Republicans lose.
Right.
If you know you got outrageous numbers to win, then you can but I could see, in a way, at first I was mad, and then I thought, well, they probably got a game plan.
Oh,
They
yeah.
talked amongst themselves.
You know, like one of the things you got to realize is just like Trump figured out how to do his second term based on his first term, and that makes him a lot more dangerous because he used to have people controlling him. He's, fixed all that, but that's also a problem because now he makes more mistakes because he has dumb people around him and all that. But he's figured out what to do. The Democrats are getting better as well. They're paying attention. They know that, okay, this didn't work. We'll try this other thing. You got to have some trust. Otherwise, and by the way, these people, by and large, Democrats tend to be smarter overall,
They usually have an education.
Yeah, exactly. So they're usually more aware. And I know Jeffries for sure. Well, Jeffries and Schumer both. Their astrology this year is much better than in 24. That was one of the reasons. I said this at the end of 24. I said that to me, the 26 midterms looked really good for the Democrats because both leaders, and even then they were saying, oh, we don't even want Schumer. See, that's the thing, right? You want someone better. Well, he's still there, right? So now you got to work with this guy until you get a better person, right? That's the
younger people will make their appearance probably after 28.
Yeah, that's for sure. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. But Pete Hedgehog, what's his astrology look like?
It's not good. It's not good. He is already this period we're in now, between now and June, very vulnerable to something, to a big mistake.
Now in June? We're already almost in May.
Yeah, no, like now, meaning like between now and June. The zone it's kind of like Trump's. He's got a planet linked to the same degrees as Trump. But then in the summer, he's like in the RFK zone. That zone in there in the summer is very complicated. So.
Hey, I just got a flag on my phone that says that the U.S. Justice Department indicts FBI Director James Comey for a second time.
Sure. Well, I'm sure he's.
And you know what? It's going to be a nothing burger.
You know what? Comey's he's probably thinking, if they indict me twice, 3 times, that would make a pretty good book. Indicted 3 times.
There you go. He's going to make some money off of this.
Yeah, because they can't convict because they have nothing. And see, this is the other thing, right? This I don't know, but I'm hoping. I don't know this. Because when we get a new administration, you got to charge people that have broken the law.
Exactly.
But whoever that is, if the person is the new president, you just explain to the public. Don't talk to me about weaponization. Weaponization is when you do what these people were doing, charging with nothing. In other words, you can't get a conviction because you're making something up. But if I charge you and I convict you, it's because there's something there, because you're convicted by...
Well, the grand jury wouldn't even say yes.
Exactly. So, this idea of comparing and saying, you came after me, I come after you, that's not how it works. To come after someone, you need an actual crime.
And Trump has 34 indictments.
Well, 34 indictments and all the people around them. I mean, no one should be safe. That, by the way, I heard this too. You probably came across it yourself. That a judge is now questioning, something happened around January 6th. There's a big question around the January 6th insurrection and the fact that that was not part of his, official duties.
Exactly. They've been saying that, yeah.
That's right. Now, the only problem with that would be that happened in 2021, and the statute of limitations is going to expire on that one, right? But if you are committing crimes, you would be exposed. He and his family, right? If you're doing something that can be prosecuted. And I don't know how a country survives if you don't prosecute all the white-collar crime, because it's very important. You know, if you just let it go and say, well, no, we're not going to do that because it's too much work, that's a really bad idea. You know, you need to follow the law. And I think they're going to be vulnerable, you know, in the next administration.
So Hedgehog looks really bad?
Hedgehog looks, yeah, for sure. For sure, it's in a pressure situation. So is Patel, but Patel, I don't know his birth time. I only know his birthday because Hegseth, I know the full chart. Patel, I can't tell because he could already be there, but it doesn't matter because one way or another, he's in a zone. He's in the summer zone too, and it extends. The worst part for these guys is that the summer zone is like a pinnacle, but then it backtracks and runs over them again as we go into around the end of the year and into the new year. So it happens twice. So you count the whole zone and you count those 2 points as being especially bad. And Tulsi Gabbard is in there, Patel is in there, Hegseth is in there, RFK is in there. There are a lot of them that are part of that thing, right? You already saw Bondi and Noam go down on Saturn pressure. That's what happened.
And by the way, Noam is still living in the general's house for the Coast Guard. She hasn't left, and they want her to go. What the hell would you do sitting down in a house that doesn't belong to you?
You know, that I haven't followed too specifically, but all I can say about that is that, you know, the way these people are playing, it just feels to me like...
She probably thinks Trump owes it to her, and he's not saying anything because he does owe it to her.
Maybe, but the problem is that how do you recover later? You know, how does Vance recover from being associated with all this? How does it work?
I know. That's what I saw. I saw people just knowing if you were affiliated with Trump at all, you're dust.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, and his is the one that is most clear to me about Vance is if he tries to run for president, he runs.
It's just a nothing. Oh
no, he goes straight into a Saturn vice in 2028. Like my feeling is he won't even get the nomination.
That's what I think too, because I just feel he's a nut. And he's got a 27% likability rate.
Nah, it's much more likely that you know, Rubio or someone like that gets the nomination.
Yeah, but you didn't see Rubio winning, right?
No, I don't. I see. Well, there are a couple. I mean, actually, Newsom and Kamala Harris have great charts in 2020.
Oh, good. And yeah, you said her chart looked really good.
It does. Her charts look really good. Like if you ask me to pick one over the other, Newsom's is, I would say 20% better, but hers is very strong too. So they're both in really good shape in 2028.
Yeah.
And that's good because we know that we suspect at least that he would probably run. You know, and again, I can guarantee you that I'm going to read some comments about people that don't like Newsom. Again, the enemy of the good. Who do you want? Suggest someone.
He can think on his feet, though. He would manage. And so can it wouldn't hurt my feelings if she got in.
No, that's right.
In a way, if you think about it, she deserves it.
That's right. They're competent people. You know, I would have been totally happy with Kamala. But by the way, I would have been totally happy with Hillary. Back in 16.
Gosh, she would have been fantastic.
I mean, look at Hillary today. This is an example of people aged differently. Look at Hillary at 79. She's almost 80. She looks to me totally awake and present. Compare that to Trump, who sometimes, you know, has trouble figuring out.
Well, you got pictures of everybody standing behind him and him like that.
Yeah, no, and by the way, you can see, because this is not invented. Look at videos of Trump in 2016. Look every year and compare, and you'll see, wow, this guy's really changed. This happened to Biden too, by the way. Biden in 2016 was almost at a peak, and then each year he lost energy, and by 2020 he was already declining.
But he's getting more rest now. He's sure up and going now. He's very alert and cool, but he's not president anymore. He doesn't have to keep those long hours.
Yeah, no, and it's a question though of how much energy there is there to take on a big job. And I'm not saying necessarily that Hillary wouldn't also suffer from, taking a presidency when you're 80 is way too old. But even so, to me, she looks the same way, just as clear as she did when she ran, back
So
against Obama.
smart. She's so
exactly.
smart.
Exactly.
So, if Gavin Newsom is president, his chart looks decent, right?
It does. I mean,
But listen, I told people, because, I predicted there'd be 2 more attempts on Trump. In July, I predicted it. But I never saw him going down by an assassination. So I don't think it's good if he was taken out. I think it would work totally against us. He would be...
No. I think his odds, the bigger danger he's in is of going down due to a health something or other.
issue.
That's one, because that's there too in his chart. But personally, even though whatever happens is fine, I'll accept it. But it would be good, I think, right now to have him be there and lose in the midterms. It's important, I think, for him to be present, because it'll deal a massive.
Even with the Texas adding all those seats, somebody on the news was saying, and I totally agree with this. Yeah, you can open up seats and make it Republican, but just because it's Republican doesn't mean it's going to win as a Republican. It could still win as Democrat.
Yeah, there's. I'm trying to track that to see if I can get more and more in the the weeds to really understand it. And apparently, the bigger the wave, the more some of the gerrymandered seats could still fail and go Democratic. But also Democrats have made big moves in California and Virginia, and so then that helps a lot because it counterbalances what they might gain. And in Florida, where DeSantis now, that's something I got to study because I haven't looked at his chart in a while, and I want to know this thing that he's trying to do. He's doing something that apparently may not work in court because Florida has strict rules about doing the kind of gerrymandering that is clearly partisan. They have rules about that. So I'm not totally sure if that's going to work out for the media, because they could get 3 or 4 seats there. But I don't think they can stop the avalanche. The whole point is, no matter what they do, the GOP now is so unpopular, and they've set up this thing with the war and the way Trump manages. You can't win like that because you upset everybody.
Gas is going through the roof right now.
Yeah. I mean, the people that are paying attention, they're obviously going to turn against you. And the people that aren't paying attention, they just look at the price. They drive by and they go, wait a second, this guy keeps telling me.
In the markets, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So the 2026, the House especially, the Senate is looking pretty good too, though. The Senate is looking pretty good.
Oh, I know, it's fantastic.
When you have Alaska, you have Ohio, you have there was one map that I saw that without Texas, they still would win. With Texas, it would be even more, right? And
can I tell you though?
What do you see for that?
Susan Collins is way back. Susan Collins should lose. She's not getting the numbers at all. But this is deja vu because I even remember O'Connell had horrible. He had like a 27% likability, and he still won Kentucky.
Well, Kentucky's more red than Maine, though, because Maine, if you're in a bad zone, it's more purple, so you could lose. Okay. Kentucky, they say I don't like him, but I like the other person even less. So.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
okay.
And
what were you were asking me a question. Sorry.
Well, I was asking you, what do you see? Do you see Tallarico's?
I see Tallarico winning.
Then that's another.
There's a hit I get when I look at them, and boom, it was just yes, Tallarico's going to win.
I see. This is the thing. If Tallarico wins, to me, that's the canary in the coal mine that the Senate is going to turn blue. Because if Tallarico wins, if you win in Texas, you're going to win the other places too, because that tells you that there's a big move away from red.
Texas is sick and tired of this Trump administration. Farmers and everybody, they're losing their shirts with this guy. Farmers are really suffering. It's just terrible what's happening to farmers. And look at the military out there in the streets, and there's hardly any food to eat. if it's true, because you don't know sometimes it's people saying that and it's not true. But there's a lady that writes me who tried to send her son on the Tripoli, USS Tripoli, just care packets, with protein bars and some other. They won't deliver them. They won't send them.
Yeah, well, I mean, it could be possible. Could be possible because the other thing is, yeah, this whole crew of people, they're so untrustworthy. You just can't believe anything they say. You have to always wait to
Yeah.
see if it comes out. But the thing is, that's the other thing. Where in Russia, Putin is shutting down the internet and trying to turn Russia into North Korea. That's a big, big, big thing to do in the U.S. It's so hard. And the incredible thing
Trump
is that,
would love to do it.
well, of course, but you notice that if anything, we know way too much. We know things that he doesn't want us to know. 'Cause
Yeah.
how do we find out that whole thing with Netanyahu in the room, showing him the presentation, and then Trump says, yeah, let's do it. He doesn't want that known because now people say, hey, Netanyahu is leading you along like a dog, doing things, and he hates that. But the reporting is intense. There are people they have their sources, because the other thing is this group has a lot of people that are, leaking and stabbing each other in the back and so forth.
Yeah. And
That's
the
his style.
military, by the way, they're having a lot of trouble with anybody agreeing to go over to Iran. They're really shortchanged.
Well, unsurprising, right? Unsurprising. That's the thing that, in past eras, if you look back to the Second World War, people just didn't have the information. The country would be told they're out to
But
kill
all
us. We
they
have to
knew
go.
was the Pearl Harbor, and my dad was a young kid, and he said he couldn't wait to turn 18 to fight that war.
Yeah, well, and that probably is justified because, that was an actual major hit, right? But
2,000 something
yeah.
men died. Yeah.
Yeah, that's an actual. It's like the whole idea that wars are supposed to be fought defensively, not offensively, where you go in
Right.
to try to grab territory. I mean, this guy, Trump is like a buccaneer. His attitude is, I'm going to go in and I'm going to defeat you and take your oil. It's like brutal. It's and then you arouse a lot of opposition. But the thing is that he doesn't seem to understand or doesn't want to believe basic rules, because they're always going on about they don't want to be globalists. They want to be all in the U.S., stay here, the oceans protect us. Yeah, but everything is linked. He found that out with Greenland. He tried to push in there, and then they started selling bonds, and the next thing you know, he realized this is going to start tanking the market, and it's going to make everything worse because everything is interlinked. You pull this
Oh,
string,
and the market dropped big time. Yep.
Yeah,
Yep,
exactly.
I remember.
So-
Then he changed his mind.
Exactly, and he said whatever he said, but really he found out there are too many things that are linked, and well, look at this. He should have thought, if they start messing with that canal, we got a problem, right? Because the world loses a lot of important, energy, materials, fertilizer, helium, all
Yeah.
that stuff. It affects everything. Doesn't think it through, and even though they have way less capability, Iran can't fight the U.S., toe to toe. They can't do that, but they have enough. They have enough to keep
And
us.
they got those little sleeper cells. They are they have, somebody said they have a long memory.
Oh
And
yeah,
you'll
no,
be
for sure.
surprised. I don't think Trump and his family are ever safe.
No, that's true, and separately, but this will probably take longer. Separately, the Pluto and Aquarius cycle. If you look at when it was last there, which is many years ago, because Pluto's orbit is 250 years, right? So Pluto back in the 18th century, when it entered in Aquarius, but it took a while. As the years were passing, you got more and more revolutions for the people, like the French Revolution, for example,
Yeah.
all those things. But it didn't get into a better lifestyle for a while. It wasn't right away, not at the very beginning of the planet. So it is at the planet entering Aquarius. So it is going to come around, and I would expect Iran at some point, probably rebelling and having a real revolution, not this kind of revolution where you have a revolution and you put these guys in charge. They're horrible. They're repressing women. It's brutal. You want something where you can live a normal life, but that could be a while. And right now, Iran, no, they're in the same zone as the U.S. It's hard. Both countries are suffering.
Both countries are. Now, what do you get? Did you take a look, see, or we could do that another show on King Charles? How's his chart look?
King Charles, I could probably pull it up here. I think I have it. I was going to say that let's not forget that the one that is not doing well is Putin. Is not doing well at all.
Oh, I think he hasn't made any showings in a long time.
No, and I mean, and it's getting worse because the same zone that we're going into this period in the summer is very hard on him because he has a lot of Libra planets, right? And when you see a person contracting, and in other words, the scene looks a lot like the planet, right away you think this is not good. It's going to go to a worse place. Same with Netanyahu. This is not a good year for Netanyahu.
Oh, yeah, they're marching on the streets about him.
Exactly. I mean, like, people forget that one of the things that's happened in recent years is all democracies started to run into trouble with tremendous splits. So people think Israel is just this way. Israel is almost like razor thin 50-50. At any point they can switch and have a different approach. Right. So, and even if they kept the same party, but with a more moderate person, because Netanyahu, I think, he's too extreme, and I think he's.
And also, I see my future events. I always saw a woman taking over Israel and making it a great country.
Okay, so is that right? A woman like
down the road,
a Golda Meir figure.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the king, Prince Charles. The one thing I see here that's a little concerning is, well, he's okay now. It could have affected his health. Next year is a health year for him.
Oh,
for sure.
Geez, he doesn't need that. He's got that cancer. Yeah.
Yeah, because he's got the ruler of the health house, the house of hospitals where you used to be a nurse. That house.
Yeah.
If you poke that planet with something challenging, it might. So he has cancer already.
He's apparently he's recovered from it, but he's being watched. Apparently, it's a bad cancer.
Well, next year is a big test, big test,
okay.
Because Pluto goes right through that zone in a square. Yeah, let's keep an eye on it, but it's a little scary.
It would be a shame after he waited so long to become king, and now he's.
Yeah, and I mean, and then the thing is, there's also because he's a Scorpio. He's a Scorpio with Mercury in Scorpio, and so the other thing is that then that's 27, but 28 Saturn goes into Taurus, which is opposite Scorpio. That's another pretty challenging.
Hit.
It's a challenging period. Like Saturn, the worst part of Saturn, because it rules time and aging. If it starts to link to your diseases or your sickness, then you're in trouble. You're in trouble because the older you are, the harder it is to fight back too.
Yes, exactly.
So I would say one step at a time, but next year is challenging.
It's challenging.
Yeah.
Yeah. People
sure.
were mad that he showed up, but I can't even watch it. I can't watch him. Not Charles. I can't watch Trump making an idiot out of himself.
No, and I mean, I don't know if it's true that they were. I'm trying to research that if that's true that they were talking about things and someone did a lip reading thing, and that I gotta search a little more because it sounded like Trump was trying to impress him with war talk and the things that Putin wants to do, and Charles kept saying, "We'll talk later about that." So he.
Yeah, Charles doesn't want to be involved in that.
He doesn't want to.
But what was I going to tell you? Let's see. We were talking about Putin, and I also wanted to know about Netanyahu. He looks really bad.
It's for Netanyahu. This is a very challenging year, and it's the last thing you want to do is to seek the public's endorsement when you've got the baggage he's created. Because this is the other problem: is that I'm sure they're going to look at it and say, okay, this is working, but it's not really working overall because it's putting them at risk. If you can't finish the problem, to finish the war, but it's very hard to do. How do you completely, how do you eliminate Iran? And one of the things with Iran, by the way, I've often thought that No, because people will say, well, we don't want them to have nuclear weapons. In reality, nuclear weapons, they tend to prevent wars because when you have a
Everybody's
nuclear
holding
weapon,
on to theirs. Yeah.
yeah, so like the idea would be that I can't shoot at you because you'll shoot at me. Nuclear weapons are instant death for both sides. So if Iran has them, it actually will put a check on Israel because Israel won't be as ready,
Yeah. And
to
they say Trump wanted to open up the nukes against Iran. And apparently the general stepped out of there and said, you can't,
no. And I mean, it's crazy because yeah, I mean,
if it's true.
it's
The
if
other
it's,
thing
if,
is we don't
if it's
know
true, yeah,
what
we
the
don't know.
hell is true
Yeah, I
or
mean,
not true.
a lot of these things you really got to verify them because it's so easy to go down a rabbit hole and create a case and then you discover later that it was completely made up. But the whole idea with nuclear weapons is that even though obviously the more there are out there, the more sooner or later one of them gets exploded somewhere. So that's dangerous. But to think they're going to get a weapon so they can throw a weapon at Israel. Well, that doesn't seem like a smart idea. Like if you did that, Israel for sure. If you hit Israel, they are going to hit you back. Guaranteed.
Exactly.
Guaranteed. And then everybody dies. So,
But what's interesting is Israel doesn't have to report their nukes. They don't have to have anybody check. They can
Yeah.
just do what they want. And that's how they roll. And it's interesting that they can roll like that, but everybody else is supposed to follow their lead.
yeah, no, it's true. I mean, look at the U.S. To the U.S. Well, we know the countries, though. This is known. China,
I often thought the
France.
U.S., and this is interesting because we're going into a whole new beginning. I often thought the U.S. got a little too big for their britches. And in a way, they act like we're the rulers of the whole world. And they try to they do negotiate and stuff. But sometimes their attitude is, that we're the most powerful in this. No, not really.
But it's changing.
Now we're disrespected by everybody.
It's changing anyway. This is changing because, the world is becoming more connected and China is on the rise and the U.S. has less influence. So it's a fact of life. And I mean,
And Trump is such a clown. We're a laughingstock.
well, and we're losing allies. That's the worst part.
Yeah.
Because, Trump doesn't seem to realize that a lot of the U.S. success is our alliances, right? We've got a lot of friends who work with us. Trump is so reckless and unfair when he says NATO. NATO was there when in 9/11 when the U.S. was hit.
I know.
People went and died in Afghanistan and
People
Iraq.
died.
People died from other countries. I mean, how can he say this? It's unbelievable.
He's so awful.
He's just awful. He's totally awful.
And his wife over there all taken apart by something Jimmy Kimmel said. He made some comment about her being
Yeah.
glowing as a widow.
Well,
And she thought that was disrespectful and how dare he. And I thought, this is the same guy, your husband is the same guy that was glad that our former attorney general was dead. He was glad when that producer died who was murdered by his son, him and his wife. He thought that was great.
No, absolutely. Absolutely. And by the way, Kimmel, in case people don't know, most people know this too, because this is the thing. People these days, a lot of this bad energy has made them a lot more attentive and they know what's going on, which I think is a good thing. The more you're connected, the better. So they probably know that Kimmel made that comment days ago, and he made it in the context of the fact because he was joking about how she's much younger than Trump, and so
Yeah.
of course she's more likely to become a widow. That's not that's the way it is. And yesterday, by the way, Kimmel addressed it and was very clear.
Davis, yeah.
So, but you know what it is? He's not going to get fired because the last time they tried that, the public reacted and started canceling.
Cray. Yeah.
Exactly. But that said, okay, after having said all that, Jimmy Kimmel, he's in a year where he probably should be a little more careful because he's on his Saturn return, which happens when you're 30 and when you're 59, like 29 and a half, 59. He's right there. And it is more risky, things going wrong. It's better when Saturn is around. It's better to stay more contained and don't be as brash because he's pretty brash. I mean, Kimmel,
Yeah.
he'll just tell you flat out, this is what I think. So I wouldn't be surprised though if there were some kind of change in him this year too, because these returns, they're big, and he's going through this period right now. Same with Newsom now, as he moves toward leaving office in November. That period going into about like 2027, basically. That year, he's got to survive. He's got to make sure that nothing bad shows up to stop his run. Once he gets into the election zone, which will already be there by the middle of 27, fall of 27, then it's a cruise. It's excellent energy.
You said that. And
Yeah.
I get that sneaking suspicion that they'll probably try to throw out, like they did with Biden, some lady to come forward and said he assaulted her or something. They'll try to think of something. They get desperate when it comes to Newsom.
Yeah, possibly. But like you said, the one thing about him, like him or dislike him, he's really fast on his feet. And he's also, from his chart, this guy is a brawler. If you get into it with him, he will fight you. He's got the John McEnroe energy in his chart. These are
Oh
people
my
that,
God. He
when they
don't
fight,
mess.
they will fight, for everything. And so I would imagine he would, take that approach in his
Well,
governance.
people think I'm really sweet, but if you read my astrology,
Yeah, yeah.
I've had more astrologers say to me, you got a nasty temper.
Yeah, I know what they're
Hello.
referring to. I know what the,
Hello. One time I was drunk at a club an Irish club on Geary Street. I was it was before my sons were born. I was wearing high heels and a short dress, and my friend was still in the club. So when I turned around to try to open the door to go back in to say, Bernard, where are you? Come on, let's go. And I pushed on it, and it was locked. And some guy standing next to me of course I was drunk, made some wise ass crack, and then he pushed me. And boy, oh boy, honest to God, I know you would be shocked at your dear friend. I turned into a demon from hell. I even took my legs up, high heels and everything, and kicked him, right up in the chest. And I punched him and kicked him till he was rolling in the streets. He was in the gutter on Geary Street. And I heard some people say, call the police. And then I took off running down 4th Avenue, I think. Bernard had a flat, one of those places. And so I'm sitting on his stoop right there waiting for him. And here comes Bernard. He was a carpenter, and he came in a white truck, and he turned it around. He said, hey, Linda, some bloody effing woman just beat the bloody effing crap out of this man in front of the pub. I said, yeah, Bernard, that was me.
well,
His face just got real.
yeah, it's the Pluto. So Newsom and McEnroe is Pluto Mars square. I know for sure for Newsom, I think McEnroe too, but yours is Pluto Mars conjunct. Same, Pluto Mars.
Is it? Yeah.
Yeah, Pluto
I'm
Mars.
much better than I used to be. But boy, back when I was young, anybody mouth off to me. I couldn't handle, I was raised in that environment where you're always told what you can do, how you should think. So I had a real knee jerk with anybody trying to control me, and I would turn into a flaming bitch.
No, and then in astrology, when you see, because you're Virgo energy, so Virgo really mostly isn't that way. It's a more Virgo thrives on at least trying to be modest and humble.
Yes.
And then you have a lot of Libra energy, which that's at least you pretend at first and you try to be nice. But Leo energy and Pluto Mars, no. Fire energy, when you put planets like that, Pluto Mars especially is it's a fighting energy. It goes all out. So the thing with energy like that is you try to transform it and put it in zones where, because obviously it's not a good idea to be punching people. You might get charged, all that stuff, right? So
No. I just punched that guy, and I got in. We had a riot at my high school when Martin Luther King died, and somebody tried to get me. And Dad taught me, when you hit somebody, you keep your wrist as stiff as you can, and literally turn up while you're hitting them. And I hit that person, and I could hear their nose pop, and they started to bleed, and I ran down the hallway and got into a classroom. But that's the only time I've ever really, except me and my brothers and sister, I threw my brother one time out the kitchen, down the hallway. He went flying.
Wow. Well, I'll have to make sure I stay away from you. Not
Yeah,
upset.
well, no, now I'm not like, but you know what I do now when I'm mad at someone? I just cut them off.
Yeah, that's a lot safer. I mean, this is the
Yeah,
thing. This is, I mean, the thing. Maybe we know the final conclusion to all this is that all of this is Mars talk. I mean, because I was mentioning Pluto, Mars, Pluto, Mars. Uh, Mars is actually that's the world right now is in a Mars zone because Aries is Mars ruled, right? That's why you get a lot of military action. Mars is very combative, can be angry. I did this video recently where I showed how Trump is in Washington. The Mars gets intensified because the locality chart
yeah,
hyper-focuses the Mars. That's why he's more warlike and irritated and angry and all of the
yeah,
Mars things. But in reality, Mars, the way to use Mars is just energy. And it's kind of the notion of you realize before you throw the punch or before you feel it inside. You feel, I'm going to do this. And then you have to have enough awareness to notice it. It's just your chemicals moving and channel it somewhere else. It's that simple. You channel it into
yeah,
something,
right.
something wholesome, something, or even just don't use it that way. Go for a run, whatever. But obviously, if you start getting violent, then you'll get temporary satisfaction, and then you'll probably have a lot of repercussions. So don't do that, right?
Right, right.
That's the energy of transformation in astrology. You always try to take planets and move them to a new level. And that's what you've done, and you just do more of that if it comes
Well,
up.
I like astrology too because, like, those Saturn aspects, because I know what Saturn can do. I got breast cancer the last time it was in my sign. And you can take advantage of that. You can know what to do, you know how to live through it. And Saturn always leaves a gift at the door when it's leaving.
It does if you engage it, as a work energy, yeah, which would have been, for instance, in that case, you put all your energy into healing. The Saturn is contraction, so contraction is focus, concentration, focus. You
Yes.
bring your mind in, and you have to patiently live through it, right, without
Right.
trying to step outside the bounds. Then it's fine. It's totally fine, but it takes a while, and a lot of people get impatient. 'Cause
Yeah.
it's just,
Now, do you have anything you want to tell us before we leave about aspects for coming up, or is there anything we should flag or?
well, the one just to this could be interesting to remember is that we're going toward the full moon now. The moon is growing in the sky, so that's going to be Friday. Friday, it's opposite, like Sun in Taurus, Moon in Scorpio. So the energy rises and things become more clear. It's a really good time to have insights and clarity about something in your life. Of course, it'll depend where in your chart it is, but you can tune into the period that way. Now, on the other hand, that full, as many have been for Trump, it's not good because that full moon is hitting one of his planets, so he'll probably be all enraged and like on Friday, Saturday type thing. But if you know that it's there, it's also a good time to encounter the reality of astrology because there's a change in the energy and you try to feel it. You probably would tell people when you were a nurse that strange things happen on the full moon, right? Because
Oh,
everybody's
we
yeah.
always got, well, a lot of babies. And earthquakes cause women to go into labor, something with the barometer thing. And then full moons, we get the crazies. That was crazy full moon nights.
Yeah, I can always tell because one of the nights of the full moon, I'll have trouble sleeping. It's like it's energy
Oh
like
yeah,
this.
yeah, I know.
But then I also notice that it's really easy somehow to have a high and then have a low at some point, a real crash in the energy, which is why full moon people tend to be like that. By nature, they're brighter, they're more connected in life. It's actually auspicious, but they're more prone to gyrations, right?
Yeah.
You see a lot of people in politics have full moons because overall it's auspicious. Like in the Vedic system, they'll do their celebrations and their festivals. They pick full moons. They don't pick new moons, even though you'd think the new moon because that's the start. The new moon is not a great period. The full moon is better. So that's coming up. And for the people that are pondering, because this full moon is a money moon, because Taurus and Scorpio are the two money signs.
Yeah.
So if you're pondering financial things in your life that you need to, resolve, understand, it could be a moment to get some clarity around that
Cool.
in your life. Yeah. So that's what we could say. All right.
All right, my friend.
was
Thank
fun.
you so much.
We'll see everyone again soon. Bye, everyone.
Bye.